Welcome to Public Affairs. Our guest tonight is Marilyn Katz, who is the perfect guest for us to have. We're taping this on April 4th, which is the second day of the Lori Lightfoot new mayoral administration. And so Marilyn, of course, knows something about Harold Washington because you were instrumental in helping him get elected, working on press and media matters, right?
So yeah, I mean, I was
in his campaign.
In his campaign, and then when he moved into public office, I worked with intergovernmental affairs, and I've worked with every mayor since Harold.
Every mayor?
No, actually not.
You
Sawyer. Actually, when Harold died, actually when Harold died, the next day, I was told my contracts were over. That was it was a good learning.
So you didn't work for Sawyer.
Right,
but
I worked very...
when Richard M. Daley came in '89, you worked for him?
It was very interesting. We became very close friends, and we worked together a lot, even though I had defeated him in his first run for mayor. Okay. But we worked together on national issues, on strategy and the passage of the low-income housing tax credit, which is how the nation produces housing. We worked on Meigs Field together. We worked on the Bungalow Initiative.
You helped him plow Meigs Field?
I did.
You drove the plow through there?
I drove the plow, the metaphorical plow.
Of course, she's kidding me.
The metaphorical
But
plow.
you actually helped him get rid of Meigs Field?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And then fast forwarding, whatever, so 22 years with Richard M. Daley. Off and on you were working
Off and on with the Department of Housing. I introduced green into blue on recycling. I created the Bungalow Initiative for him.
Okay.
A lot of different things.
And then Rahm?
Rahm worked in partnership through the CHA with Chicago City of Learning, and because I do a lot of community development
stuff.
stuff.
You're a close chum of Lori Lightfoot. Would that be accurate?
No, I am not a close chum.
Are you a friend?
No, a friend of Lori Lightfoot.
Did you support her?
I supported both women.
Both women. Oh, because you were the head of...
Chicago Women Take Action.
And did they take, were they neutral?
We did not take a position because really, we were split down the middle.
So officially you couldn't take a position because they didn't, but just whisper in my ear.
No. Those who know don't tell.
Okay. Okay, you're not, but you like Lori Lightfoot.
I like Lori Lightfoot.
You've known her a long time?
Yeah, and I think we're an amazing city. As I was writing to friends of mine across the country, you know, Chicago has this reputation of being the most segregated, the most racist city in the country, but I can't think of another major city, major state that has every high office, or most, occupied by African American women. So we have Lori Lightfoot, mayor; Toni Preckwinkle, chair of the county board; Dorothy Brown, clerk of the courts; Kim Fox, state's attorney; Juliana Stratton, lieutenant governor. And then we have a couple of black men, too.
And the city's a mess. Do you want to be proud that women are running things if it's a mess?
I don't think the city's a mess.
You don't think Chicago's a mess?
No, I think Chicago's one of the great cities of the world, which has become a global city and has a GDP bigger than most countries.
Well, let's just go right to homicides. I mean, Lori Lightfoot said the first thing we have to do is get people safe, get kids safe. I think she's talking mostly about the south side and the west side,
well,
right?
There are 5 communities that are responsible for 500 homicides, which
5 communities, okay.
Excuse me, yeah, which is half the number that there were in the year 2000, where there were 900 homicides.
Really?
In fact, our homicide...
The year 2000.
The year 2000. In fact, crime is down, including homicides, in every community except 5, and even in Austin, which is the epicenter of homicide, it's pretty flat.
Who are the other 4?
Englewood, Grant Crossing, Lawndale, and...
So, okay, another west side or south side?
Another, I think it's West Pullman and one other.
Okay, close enough.
Right.
And that accounts for 500 homicides a year?
Pretty much.
And right now we're running about at a pace of, I think, about 600, is that right?
We had a big spike. We were down to the lowest.
Last year, what was it?
I think it was like 800.
No, last year was lower. I think last year was closer to 600.
But
when we peaked 2 years ago, it was close to 800.
800. Yeah. But understand that the years before that, we had gone down from 2000 to the lowest homicide rate since 1963.
Yeah, Gary McCarthy would say the great Gary McCarthy years. When he came in, he was stable in like 450, 500,
And
right?
that's what he would say.
But he was right on the numbers. When
He was
he
right.
was there from 2011 to 2015, our homicides were in that 450 to 500 range. When he left, the big deluge in 2016 it went up like 200.
You know
right?
what else left?
It could be just like
You know what
Spurs.
else left?
What?
70,000 jobs on the west side.
And that's what caused this big spike in
I think
homicides?
it's part. I mean,
Okay.
look, you know, we could map homicides and what you would see. The other big thing that happened is we stopped funding the interrupters, the gang interrupters. I mean, these are relationships. So I kill your brother kills my sister, blah, blah, blah. And it's almost a social disease.
And the gang interrupters knew who these people were, knew how to how to interrupt them. They were the equivalent in technology. We have disruptors. They were
That's
interrupters.
Right. They were disruptors, interrupters, and they were based on a public health model. Gary Slutkin. And Gary McCarthy hated them.
Gary McCarthy hated who?
The civilians who worked with gangs.
Why did he hate them?
Because I think in the Chicago Police Department they consider it kind of betrayal and...
To work with the gang,
right.
just like you're almost working on the other side.
Right.
And your response to them would be?
It's more effective. Do what's effective to keep people safe. I mean, look, a lot of the gang activities around drugs, it's very ironic. I mean, we're about to have marijuana legalized in this state,
Yeah.
while most of the entrepreneurs for marijuana are in jail. And when they get out of jail, they're still going to be poor, while the white guys, the corporate guys who take over the production and distribution of drugs will get rich. Just kind of like what happened to the bootleggers.
So should we legalize marijuana? Commercially.
Commercially?
It's now legalized, I guess, for medicinal uses. What's not legal yet is
I think we
commercial, recreational use.
I mean, I happen to not like marijuana, but I think we should, I've always thought we should legalize it, regulate it, and in this case, not only let people out of jail who are convicted of possession or distribution, but find a way to give a portion of the business to those people who were the pioneers in the field.
Pioneers. I mean, but seriously, I'm
I'm very serious.
Do you want to encourage the use of marijuana?
I don't want to encourage the use of any drug, including alcohol.
Do you want to discourage it as a governmental entity? As the government, should the
I
government
think
try to discourage the use of marijuana?
I think I'm more of a libertarian
You're just
on that
like
issue.
laissez-faire.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. But back to, you were, Jesse Jackson held a...
Wait, let me say this.
Yeah.
You could tax it, just like we should tax soda tax, but more people die of obesity than marijuana use.
Yeah. Okay.
And actually, while we're at this homicide thing,
Yeah.
I mean, so there are 19,000 homicides in the nation a year.
Mm-hmm.
There are 40,000 suicides in the year, each year,
Yeah.
and there are 70,000 opioid deaths. So
Well, you know, suicides are one thing. You could look at it as a voluntary thing. Most of the homicides are not voluntary. They didn't ask to be killed, I don't think.
you know, I'm not
Or
so
did
sure.
they?
Oh, well, it
Maybe
depends.
it's suicide by homicide?
Some people would argue that.
Okay. We're kind of getting off the track.
Anyway,
We're
but
kinda getting
anyway,
off the track.
there's no question that violence is an issue that any mayor has to deal with. And, you know, I mean, I think there's a three-pronged approach, which I think Lori will take, and I think Tony would have taken. Education, occupation, employment, and relationship
But in this
building. I mean, when we were doing community policing in '95, as we were driving down, I mean, people felt safer, even though the numbers weren't, because they felt more empowered through community policing, through a sense of hope.
When was that?
At the late '90s, beginning of
You
2000s,
say people felt safer then, they felt more empowered.
they felt more empowered.
Because there was more community policing.
Right, right.
And were the homicide rates lower than
They were beginning to go down.
beginning to go down? Okay. So you were there, as we say, we're taping this April 4th, 2 days into, and so Lori won,
Handle
in
it.
case people weren't watching, 74% to 26%. It was just like a blowout. We've never really had anything like that. When Rahm ran against Paul Jakes, with all respect to Paul Reverend Jakes, he was kind of a nobody. Tony Preckwinkle was not a nobody. I don't
No,
think.
I mean, but remember,
So that was like an amazing,
it was
amazing-
Rahm running against Chuy Garcia, which was more
Well, recently, but when Rahm racked
the first
big
time.
numbers,
Yeah.
when people go back to a big number in an election, that wasn't even a runoff. That was an election where
Right.
Rahm, but he won that margin over Paul Jakes.
Right.
All I'm saying, when you beat Tony Preckwinkle 74 to 26,
Right.
when people take notice, that really is a mandate, either for change, for you, or something. What's the mandate? Is it a mandate? What's it for?
I think this election was about two different things, and I think that looking at the numbers, one, it is a mandate of those who voted, but sadly enough, 70% of the population, registered voters, didn't vote.
It was about 500,000 out of the
Right,
1.5 million.
Right.
And so out of that 500,000, though, she got close
she
to
got-
400,000.
She got 400,000. She
That's-
is
that's
definitely a mandate.
And, you know, you want to say, these are the people who care enough to vote. These other people, their time's too valuable, whatever reason. So I think it's a pretty big deal. You could say, well, only 500,000 voted, but these are people who give a damn.
Well, I actually think...
You think the people who didn't vote, those million, give a damn? They just didn't want to vote?
I mean, I think that...
They were busy that day?
I think a lot of them were young.
So young
and
people are too busy to vote?
I think young people are very cynical about voting.
But the point is, whatever. Okay, that's... I don't
Anyway,
wanna
it
have
doesn't
that.
matter.
Yeah, it doesn't
Lori
matter.
has a very strong mandate.
Strong mandate. Okay, so...
But she's actually in a really interesting situation. She has a very strong mandate, but she has, for the first time in 40 years, not one alderman who owes their election to her. So the first time, she is the first mayor since Jane Byrne where no alderman was really dependent on her graces.
And vice versa. She wasn't dependent on alderman wasn't dependent.
Right.
They're not apart. So that's an important point, because to do a lot of what she wants to do, presumably, it will take at least a majority of aldermen, right?
That's
to
exactly
pass the
right.
city council.
So, I mean, we are actually, even though you wouldn't know it in Chicago, we are a weak mayor, strong council
Okay.
city.
But for
We're the
some
con-
reason, it's never that way.
Because we've had very strong personality.
So in this case, will it also be a strong mayor's weak city council or not?
I
Make
think
a
it remains to
prediction.
be seen.
You
I
think?
think it's going to be a strong
Okay.
council.
Okay, so on April 3rd, the
On
day
the
after.
other hand.
On April 3rd, the day after, people should know they're looking at Marilyn Katz, who is one of maybe only two white people who were invited maybe to be there and to speak at the Unity press conference breakfast with Lori Lightfoot and Tony Preckwinkle. I think the guy from the Chicago Federation of Labor would be the only other white person.
No,
speaking.
no. Father
else?
Flager.
Father Flager. He's
Right.
almost black.
He's
okay? Okay.
He goes beyond. No,
Respectfully
no,
so.
that's
to,
right.
to blacks and whites. And Father Flager. Yeah, I got a picture of Father Flager who's almost kissing Jesse Jackson. I don't mean that, you know, his arm is around him. He's so close to him, you couldn't be closer. They are very close, right?
Well, they are. And if
Yeah.
you
I'm
know.
not saying it in a negative way.
No, it's a good thing. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a whole
Okay.
theory about race as
But
a
the
social
point is, you were
construct.
one of the
Right.
few people to speak, and also few white people to speak, other than Lori and Tony. And so you know a lot of what goes on in the black community. You know Reverend Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
You know Lori Lightfoot. So you're the best person to say, if I were Lori Lightfoot and you were talking to me, and she said yesterday, I asked her a question, what's she going to do in the first 100 days? She said, today is the first day. She's not waiting till May 20th, whenever the swearing in. Today is the
Correct.
first of the 100 days. So you're talking to Lori, I'm Lori, tell me, what should I do?
The first thing you should do is go to Springfield and figure out how you're going to get $750 million to pay the pension payment in December. That's number one. Number two, you need to assemble a cabinet this week that speaks not only to expertise in the areas of finance, housing, economic development in particular, police, education,
Those
economics.
5 or 6 things.
5 or
Who
6.
are those 5? Give us
Well,
some names. Throw out some names.
Well, that's an interesting
Who's big on
question.
police? Does she keep Eddie Johnson or go to somebody else?
I
How about Ray Kelly? You know Ray Kelly?
no, I don't know Ray Kelly.
Okay. Bratton? You know Bratton?
Yeah, I
These
do
are the
know
guys,
Bratton.
broken glass. you
I
know.
know. I like Bratton a lot.
Okay, bring Bratton in. Would you do that?
I would. Oh, I would have brought Bratton in, or Chuck, who was deputy.
Yeah, okay.
Um,
You think
4
she
and 8
could do
years
that?
ago.
Could you
Of
call
course
her
you
up and
could.
say, could you, and
Sure.
you'll help her?
I mean, Bratton and Chuck are
Okay,
getting
so
a
we got
little
that solved.
long in
Yeah.
tooth.
No, but they're
for-
still good. Okay, so we got that solved. That's policing. And now how do we bring in for education?
I would actually leave Janice there.
You would?
Yeah,
You
I
don't-
would.
Like 10 years, a credible complaint of rape and sexual assault. Now, she
You know
wasn't
what?
the superintendent,
She
but she was the
wasn't.
chief academic officer. She was a part of that cabinet. And then now she's been the superintendent, and the Tribune still can't squeeze information out of her. Seriously. They got to FOIA
You know,
her.
I think she actually has the confidence of the principals. She has confidence of the parents, and she has a relationship.
She has the confidence of parents. How do you know?
Yeah, just from interaction.
Yeah.
We work with her.
So you leave her there. You leave her in place.
I'd leave her in place.
What do you expect from her when you sit down? Because
Look, the big thing about schools is that you shouldn't have to move to Lincoln Park to go to a good school. So the real object, and it's an integrated objective, you need to make every community a community of opportunity. You need to make sure.
well, you want to, but how do you do
Well,
it?
you do it through you invest in housing. You don't say, okay, everybody move to Lincoln Park while you can, we're all black people, you can be one black
Of course not.
person.
Why don't you let
So you-
take the money that they have and go to the school of their choice? Schools would spring
No,
up
because
right next to them,
because you know what?
and then they could choose to go
Because,
there. Why don't you do that?
I grew
don't
up
you believe
in
in
this,
competition?
not necessarily.
No?
I believe that everybody, no matter how much money they have, I don't care if it's a charter school or a traditional public school, but every neighborhood needs a school.
Yeah,
Now,
but
where
I
did
was
you
just saying,
where did
why-
you grow up?
In Los Angeles. Went to a
And
neighborhood school.
What school
a
did you
neighborhood
go to?
public school.
Where'd you go?
San Fernando Valley.
Okay, so I went to
But
Nettlehorst.
you know what? It was 40 years ago. Well, I
know
wasn't going
what?
to say. It was a long time ago.
You know what? In
And-
Nettlehorst,
and you see, the teachers' unions were not so strong then.
Mm.
I had this conversation with Barack, and he says, you know what? Why did it work for you? And I said, simple. Teachers' unions were not nearly as strong as they are now.
that's not true. They were stronger.
In L.A.? No, you
No,
weren't in
and
LA.
not in L.A. I
Yeah.
lived in L.A. for 10
Yeah,
years. I
okay.
know they weren't
It
strong.
doesn't
but,
matter. I don't want to
but
personalize the
let me just
conversation,
say, if you look at the neighborhood schools in Chicago where the parents have really invested, which you can only do in a neighborhood school, it builds a neighborhood like Lakeview.
We're all for neighborhood schools.
Well, we are and we're not. We don't really put our...
More importantly than a neighborhood school is teaching kids how to read. Because you know, Bill Daley said this. You like Bill.
I like
He
Bill.
said 30% of the kids, minority kids, read at grade level. Did Bill get that right?
Yes, but that's...
Okay,
it's-
so if only 30% of the kids read at grade level, the most important thing we need to do is
have a
change that
great-
number to 70% to 80%.
have a great elementary school.
I don't care whether you send
know
them to
what?
Russia to do that, okay?
No, it does make a difference because you want kids to thrive. You get parent involvement, which means you have neighborhood schools, and you make sure
Okay.
that you incentivize the best.
If we can do both.
the
Excuse
best
me, if we
principals.
can do both. But if you had to choose between a neighborhood school that doesn't teach kids how to read and school somewhere else that does, which would you choose? If you had to make those two,
I would choose the neighborhood. And
even
I,
though they're not teaching kids how
I
to
would
read?
really, because I think it would spur the demand and the change
Okay, anyway.
in a permanent way.
Okay,
you,
so
you disempower and
you leave Janice Jackson there. We got education solved. We've got policing solved. We need somebody good in finance. We need somebody. How much are our unfunded pensions? Do you believe when they say 28 billion, or do you believe me when I say 50 billion?
probably 50.
Yeah, because Moody's says 42 instead of 28, but Moody's forgets CPS, which is another 8.
I
So
think
that's
we're
50
having-
billion.
I think
50 billion. Who solves that problem?
I would bring in Steve Koch to do the search for the right person.
Steve Koch to do the search. Who's Steve Koch? I don't know.
He was the deputy mayor for Rahm, and he's
Okay. He can do the search.
former head.
Any names, though? You got to throw out a big name that you know, you did confidence, understands the pension problem, how to solve it.
How to solve it?
What would you do to solve it?
Well, one thing I would do is probably scale back on those people who move out of the state with their pension.
Penalize them for moving out?
Well, not. I just wouldn't kind of like scale back and.
Can you do that constitutionally?
I don't know.
How about amending the Constitution to allow us in general, us being the government, to reduce benefits? Amend the Constitution.
I think you can't do that.
Well, you can try.
You can try,
Arizona's
but you know,
done that, and
I
it worked in
understand, but I don't want
Arizona.
to live in Arizona. I mean,
No,
you
but
make-
I'm saying, but they
I think
did
you make
amend
a
it,
promise.
yeah,
You've
yeah.
made a promise.
Oh, you don't want to do it, even if you made a
No,
promise?
I mean,
You
no,
think-
you made a promise to people who.
You
look,
don't have the
what are-
taxes. How are you
what
going to get?
are-
How much
well,
can you
okay,
tax
so
people to get 50 billion?
First of all, my big proposal, my
Yeah.
big proposal
Yes, what's your big proposal?
is to end the property tax. The nation's the most regressive tax that there is. And I would,
And the property tax.
And the property
And
tax.
replace it with
the income tax, and the property tax is
a
way.
city income tax?
No, Statewide.
The statewide progressive income
not.
tax would allow you to end the property tax.
That's right.
Across
Swap.
the state of Illinois?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the famous tax swap we were going to have. What's her name? Dawn Clark
Netch.
Netch, 94. She ran on it. Edgar blew her out of the water with it. And then Big Jim turned around and he supported it.
Right.
Wasn't that the most hypocritical thing you ever saw?
Oh my God, a politician being hypocritical.
Yeah, I know.
I'm really
Big
in
news,
shock.
we made news here today.
A real
Okay.
headline.
Sorry, Jim, I just had to point that out. Mr. Edgar, he's the most urbane guy. You got to
Yes.
love that guy. He's so charming
I like
and
both
urbane.
Jims.
Okay. Who's both Jims?
Thompson.
Oh,
well.
Big Jim Thompson. Yeah, you'd love Jim. Because he's a big government kind of guy. Isn't he? Big Jim Thompson?
I think Jim was a thinker. I think both, you know.
Which Jim? Thompson
Jim
or
Thompson.
Edgar?
No, Edgar was milquetoast, but nice guy. You know, nice
Thompson's
guy.
a thinker. Well,
Thompson's a
he
thinker.
ran Winston and Stratton,
George
you know.
Ryan is a thinker, an unpredictable guy,
Okay.
even if he went
Yeah.
to jail.
Okay. So we're getting off. So education.
So, Lori, so education.
We
I mean,
got
look,
education solved. We were working on pensions, and you're bringing in this guy to find somebody.
Yeah, I'm not
You don't
really
really have a
sure.
big name that you throw out
No.
that you know would be good on solving
No, I think
pensions.
it's really hard.
Okay. Well, let's go to neighborhood economic development.
So,
But that's
for that
Marilyn
one,
Katz. You take the job and tell us. You've already fixed
I
up
would have
3 neighborhoods,
probably,
haven't you? Tell us.
not me, I just
Brad.
helped them. But
You,
I would,
MK Communications is your company, right?
right, so we've done some amazing
What'd you do
things.
in Pullman Park?
In Pullman, I work with David Doig at Chicago Neighborhood Initiative.
You turned it around? It's now a safe
and
neighborhood?
Not, right. Oh, there's a 49% drop in crime.
What about Woodlawn? You turned that around?
3,000 new jobs.
Okay.
In Woodlawn, it's really interesting. POA took $30 million and leveraged that into $440 million in investment.
Yeah.
And the first population increase, 50% in 6 years of its grocery store.
So that's what we need. We need to.
That's right. So there are real, and the person who does it best, who knows it best, Julia Stash at
Julia
MacArthur,
Stash.
who used to be.
He's at the MacArthar Foundation? She. Okay.
But she won't
Oh,
do
Julia
it.
Stash. She was a former Daley person?
A former head of housing, former chief of staff, but she won't do it.
Okay.
Megan Hart from LISC,
Yeah, yeah.
who was former the mayor's
Okay.
office. I don't think
So
she
there are
would
lots of
do it.
people who could do this kind of
Yeah,
thing.
I mean, David Doig, you could try to bring him back as head of planning.
Okay, so what did you do in Woodlawn?
In Woodlawn, I worked, well, first I worked with POA.
When you
who's
say you mean MK Communications
MK
or you personally?
Communications, Both.
Both, okay.
I have a peculiar, and we,
We should say that we're talking to the president
Of MK
Communications
Communications.
and the founder.
yes.
And
But
you've
we
been doing
tend
that
to
how many
be
years? Like 20 years or so?
35.
35?
So we tend to be more than your average communications firm.
Because you do a lot of strategy.
A lot of strategy, a lot of program development, a lot of co-thinking.
Everything to turn a neighborhood around.
Or, you know, if you want to be president or pass law or whatever.
Whatever. You could make
yeah.
me president? That would be a lot of work.
You could, as Hillary Clinton said, you could have married her, and then you might be.
And I might be, I
Right.
got that right.
Got that right.
Okay.
Or Michelle.
Okay, but seriously, so, yeah, Michelle, that'd be good. She's already taken, but other than that.
Right.
Okay, but seriously, so you
Do I
did that
think
in
there's a
Woodlawn.
really great?
What else? Bronzeville. You did Bronzeville too,
Well,
right?
that's CHA, and that's,
Okay.
you know, that goes, and I also work with them.
It's turned around now, right?
Oh my goodness. So there's a huge lesson. I mean, Chicago, more than any city in the country, is a lesson for the country about how do you redevelop a community.
Yeah.
And so in CHA, when Ida B. Wells came down, the same number of low-income units are now there. But when the high-rises came down, it freed the community, and 1,500 market rate units came in, which created the density you needed to create the opportunity to put a grocery store there.
And the safety.
And the safety, excess tennis, a couple thousand jobs, you know.
So is that what you do in
That's what I would do in Englewood.
Englewood?
That's what I would do. I mean, there's some
The same thing in, what's this area in the
South
west
Shore.
side? North
well,
Lawndale?
East Garfield is a better,
Yeah.
the first Lawndale, North Lawndale, which is a tough
And
community.
what were the 2 or 3 others that you mentioned earlier?
I would do South Lawndale, Austin.
Yeah, Austin.
Which was
Could you
always,
do that, like in, how long would that take for Austin and Englewood
I'd say 10
and
years.
North Lawndale to have a,
10 years.
would you have a significant effect in a year, or would you have to
No.
wait 10 years?
You would have a significant effect in 5
Because
years.
Lori's going to say, if you don't do something
but
significant
you know
in 4
what?
years, I can't get reelected. We'll never get to 10 years.
You can get the beginnings, but you can't
People
do
could see the
fruition.
beginnings then.
Yes.
You can give her
Yeah.
something
And
tangible.
you can give somebody hope. and involvement. I mean,
Okay.
a lot of what makes people, I never thought, what makes people really angry is being manipulated or feeling they have no voice.
No hope. The audacity of hope.
Yeah.
Because you were instrumental in bringing Barack in to speak at that anti-war plaza.
Yes.
That Mary Lou Salzman.
Betty Lou.
Betty Lou. God,
Yeah.
you couldn't find anybody. She found this skinny black guy who's a state senator unknown
We
in
couldn't.
October of 2002
We were the
to
first
give
ones.
the anti-war speech. And then folks who came on my show in November and said the same thing, only in a more moderate tone, and then he became president. So
Yeah.
you are like a president maker.
Oh, absolutely. No,
Seriously.
actually, Barack, even from the 90s, always did the opposite thing of what I told him to do, except when he ran for president.
Then he listened.
Then he listened.
Okay, so, we got a few minutes, but only a few minutes. And I've been fooling around, but I think it's been good.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Much fun.
But now, in a minute or two, let me just let you talk about seriously, what would you be telling Lori to address these major issues and also to maintain her popularity? Because if you're not popular, you can't do anything.
You know what? The shocking...
Oh, also, address the city council thing.
I will.
Okay, because she wants the major difference between Preckwinkle and her, she said, was she wants to remove Lori Alderman's privilege prerogative. Tony wanted to keep it. She thought it was denigrating to say these people abuse it. So do you agree with her that she should remove that privilege? And how does she get the majority to vote to take away a power?
First of all, nobody's going to get a majority to take away aldermanic
Okay, so
prerogatives.
she can't do that.
It shouldn't be taken away and should be reformed. So I have a daughter.
Okay.
I have a child who lives in New York, where there is no aldermanic prerogative, and where City Hall just bends to every developer and local
So you're
communities.
saying it's not a
Oh my
a cure-all.
God!
It's not a
No,
cure-all.
in fact, it goes the
Okay,
other way.
so back to the more generally.
The more general,
More
I mean-
generally, how does she work with the city council? How does she get these things done?
Well, the first question
how
is
does she stay focused?
She's going to have a
You
hard
tell us.
time. You have a new city council. You've got 7 Democratic Socialists. You have about 20 old-line African-American leaders. You have 1 Barrios
It's a real
guy.
mixture.
It's a total mixture. And really, there is no... The first thing among themselves, there'll be fight for leadership. But none of them owe anything to her. So I think she,
What does she do?
she needs to appoint a really skilled government affairs person, and you're going to ask me who.
That would be you?
No.
Okay. What is it? You mean a government affairs person is like
A liaison.
in her cabinet?
An
Okay.
intergovernmental
Does she need a good
affair.
floor leader, and who would that be?
She's not going to get to choose the floor
They
leader.
choose it. Okay.
I think, theoretically,
Is she
she
going
could.
to choose
It's
the
always
finance chair?
been.
Is Scott
I-
Wegas back the new
I-
finance chair? Does she choose that?
I don't think he'll get the confidence of the alderman. And my own prediction.
So they make these choices now.
I think they may make their own choices, and I would not.
So we're running out of time. 40 seconds. What does she do?
I'll finish with a quip, which is Daley taught me a very important thing, which was good government is good politics.
I remember. Was
So-
that Richard J. or Richard M?
Richard M.
I think Richard J. said that as well.
I don't know. Richard J. was always arresting me, so we never talked.
Yeah.
But I think
Well,
that's what
if he knew you, he wouldn't have arrested you.
or faster.
Look at that smile. Could you arrest this woman?
Exactly.
All right, okay.
good.
So
So-
Richard M. taught you that.
tell me
Good
that, and
politics
so-
is good policy. Good public policy is good politics. And on that, we just want to remind you to come back every week to public affairs because, look, if we can push people like Barack Obama 6 times, Marilyn Katz is going to catch up. First time, she'll be back 5 times. Next week and every week, public affairs.
Thank you.